Okay, we cool? Moonscape behind you.
Yeah, well, I see much of
Pretty sunset. Moonlight.
All right. We're rolling.
All right. So first of all, talk about just I get this notion sitting here with you on Ventura Boulevard in the Valley, and I'm sure it's something you're very well aware of, but just kind of your fan base here, literally right where we're sitting. You have such a big fan base for so many years. Just if you can kind of talk about that and just your thoughts on that now, and when were you conscious of your fans here?
We've always done particularly well in the Los Angeles area. From day one really. I don't know exactly why that is. We appeal to some strange places all over the world. We do very well in Eastern Europe. Maybe there's some affinity between Los Angeles and Eastern Europe. I'm not sure.
Do you think it's a matter of where you get? I know K-Rock is always good to you here. Do you think it's a matter of airplay, or do you think it's a matter of people actually just finding something in your music in different places that just kind of turn them on?
A lot of it, I suppose, especially in America, is down to airplay. But when you get to some of the other places in the world, I'm not sure it is down to airplay. I think it's something more of a psyche thing. I think our music somehow appeals to their psyche. Somebody was explaining to me recently that a lot of the people don't even necessarily understand exactly what the words are about, but somehow it the emotion filters through.
Mm-hmm. Which leads to talking about this Counterfeit album, when the words aren't your words, and yet you're putting your emotion into it. So talk about that, because in terms of doing something, you think a lot of people's solo albums are the most personal albums they ever do, and yet you're choosing to do other people's songs. So how did that all start, and why is that?
I don't think it's right for me to be doing my own songs for a solo project while I'm still part of the band, because I've never been the most prolific songwriter. I think it creates a conflict. And apart from that, I really like the idea of doing covers records. When I was a kid, I used to really like the Brian Ferry covers records in particular, and they opened up a lot of music to me that I was unaware of. Things that I later went out and discovered the original versions of. So I think it's always a nice process when singers or songwriters decide to show people their influences.
Mm-hmm. It's been a long time since the last EP. Why the wait when you probably... Brian Ferry did these every couple of years. I think he still does, right? I know you've been busy with the band, but...
Well, it's mainly that I've been busy with the band, and I've also valued having time off and doing other things outside of music. I've got a family, and they like it when I'm at home occasionally. But I have been talking about making this follow-up record for a long time now, and it's not coincidental that me and Dave, the singer from Depeche Mode, have solo records coming out at the same time. When I realised that he was going to be spending most of last year making his own solo record, I realised that it was the time for me to actually put into practice what I've been talking about for a while.
Mm-hmm. Was that something you always knew he was going to do? Has he been talking about it forever, that he would do an album like that?
He's spoken about it for a few years, but I think it only seriously after the Exciter project, after the Exciter album was finished.
Mm-hmm. When you start doing something like this, so how do you look at it? Is it all in regards to the arrangement and putting your stamp on it? Do you want it to seem like something new and yours, or are you trying to do justice to the song? How does that dichotomy work?
I never want to do an exact replica of the original song. That seems very pointless. So I try to take the songs down different avenues, try to make them into something slightly different, and somehow put my own identity into them, but also try and retain the important elements from the original version. I think if you change the vocal melody, change a few of the words, and change all of the chords, that it's not a cover version anymore. With each song, you have to try and work out what the important elements are, and then retain those.
Mm-hmm. Describe the feeling when you're actually there and you're putting it. You've done that. You've made it something new and made it your own. Just describe the feeling that you get from pulling that off and creating something new.
It's usually relief, because you know, making electronic music, this is going to sound really bad. I don't mean it to sound this bad, but it's not the most exciting thing in the world. You know, one of my friends popped into the studio one day for 10 minutes, and we were working on a small section of a track that was looping round and round and round. And after 10 minutes, he said, "Oh, you know what, I've got to go." He said, "I can't believe that you can be listening to this same loop for 10 minutes. And we said, we've been listening to it for 4 weeks. You know, and it is a little bit like that. And it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of experimentation. And sometimes we'll do 3 or 4 different versions of a song before we hit on one that we actually like. So when we get to that point where we think, okay, all those important elements that we liked about the original are there, it's got a great atmosphere, it's a real feeling of relief.
Talk about creating that atmosphere, because is it important for you to keep kind of creating new atmospheres, or do you kind of find yourself harking back to certain sounds you may have done before? How does that kind of work? Because certain things you do, you know, for the listener, it's kind of reminiscent of other stuff, and the other stuff feels new. Is it important to seem new with the things that you do?
I think that it is important to try and do new things, but I think that you know, I am naturally drawn back to certain things. I think a lot of the songs on this album have a kind of loneliness or solitude to them that a lot of the things that I do with Depeche Mode have as well. And that's just something that obviously, you know, is somehow important to me somewhere deep inside, and I can't get away from that no matter what I do.
Mm-hmm. Is that therapeutic in a way when you do, even if there's someone else's songs, they become your songs now? Is it, because you know, you're probably not a lonely guy, but where does that come from?
I've always, this is another difficult one to explain, but I've always tried to explain it by saying that that songs that somehow have a loneliness to them, that you know, a lot of people talk of you know, feeling of melancholy or whatever. Melancholy, I don't know why that word I don't like so much, but I like loneliness and you know, solitariness, if that's a word, and you know, that's what I'm drawn to. I say I lost the track on that one.
That's okay, but that's also usually coupled with a lot of love and a lot of emotion and a lot of romantic stuff.
Yeah, no, I know what I was going to say. So this feeling of you know, solitariness and loneliness, for me somehow bears more resemblance to reality. You know, that those sort of songs seem more in the key of life to me. I don't like really happy songs. They somehow don't seem real. They seem a little fake. So that's why I'm always, you know, pulled towards these songs, and they'll be the sort of covers I want to do, and they'll be the sort of songs I want to write.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is that reality, you think, what touches your fans the deepest, knowing that this is real stuff that you're talking about?
I like to think that is what the appeal of you know, my songs and what we achieve as a band and what I achieve as a solo artist is. You know, I think that is at least part of it.
Mm-hmm. How important is all your many fans' reaction to what you do as a solo artist? Because you only had the one album so long ago. This probably feels new in lots of ways, even doing this album now. A little different. Are your expectations the same as when you're with the group?
The expectations are definitely nowhere near the same, because you know, this record is really not very commercial at all. I don't see it as being commercial. Even the first single from it, Stardust, is, you know, possibly the least commercial one off the whole album that we could have chosen to release as a single, possibly. But I had a discussion with Daniel Miller from Mute Records, you know, a company in London, and he said, you know, you chose to go down that route. There isn't a radio-friendly track on the album, so it's almost irrelevant which one we choose as a single. It's just, you know, hopefully some kind of promotional tool somewhere. I'm not quite sure where, but, you know, the word single immediately, you know, conjures up promotional tool. I don't know where, because it's not getting played on the radio or getting, you know, any video play. Maybe people see it in stores occasionally.
Right. Do you do videos? I mean, you're known for all the great visuals with the band. Is that something you're still going to be part of now as a solo artist?
I have done a video for the first single, Stardust. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, when you say this is all new as well, this is all very new, because with the first Counterfeit EP that came out, I didn't do one interview. There wasn't really a single from it, and we didn't do a video.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, you know, there was absolutely zero promotion. So this is a little bit strange now. I've just done 2 weeks in Europe, doing about 100 interviews.
Wow.
And you know, I realised the benefits of being in a band, because you know, even if there's only 3 people in the band, you know, at least you only have to do a third of the interviews.
Right. Does it still feel strange sitting here without the other guys? Or are you getting used to talking about yourself?
You know, sometimes we do the interviews separately anyway, so that's not that weird. It's just the volume of the interviews. You know, having to do so many.
Did you talk to them about the solo stuff now? Are you in contact with them? Are they kind of rooting you on? How close are you guys at this point when you're doing your thing?
Well, it's a strange situation that I haven't actually heard Dave's solo record yet, because his one was finished after mine, and I know he's now got promotional copies through, and I'm sure I may even get one today, because I'm staying here in Los Angeles tonight, and he's staying here in Los Angeles tonight, and I found out yesterday we're staying in the same hotel, so I'll probably see him tonight.
Is that a coincidence, or is it like one of your old haunts where you guys would normally stay?
I don't know, it's where we often stay,
Sure.
but it's coincidence that I think that we both happen to be here tonight. So I know 2 weeks ago he hadn't heard my album either, but he may have heard it by now, I don't know.
Is it important to hear what he thinks of it, or do you guys kind of joke around with each other, or do you take each other seriously, your commentary?
Well, it'll be interesting to you know, to see what he thinks. I'm interested to hear his album.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, he's been in the band now for 23 years, and this is his first solo record, so it's obviously important for him to, you know, to be doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You guys' music, you've stayed busy the whole time. The band stayed busy really from the beginning. It hasn't really stopped, and you've been, you know, the primary focus of that since the start. But I was wanting to ask you, there's been kind of like a revision or a revival of 80s music, and all that stuff's kind of come back, even though you guys haven't gone away. Do you pay attention to that? Is that kind of a kick? How do you look at all that, like whole Electroclash thing? And
I find the you know, the Electroclash thing quite funny. You know, the whole thing has come around a little too quickly for my liking.
Yeah.
You know, we're still trying to forget the old futurist, new romantic days.
Right.
But you know, some of it I like. You know, it's they're very authentic. A lot of the bands are you know, particularly good at being authentic.
Mm-hmm. Any bands you're particularly fond of that are creating music now?
In Electroclash or generally?
Or generally, and people that may be doing that kind of sound.
There's not really an Electroclash band that I like in general, you know, like every track.
Right.
You know, I quite like the Ladytron single. I think it was the single, you know, whatever it was called, 17, I think it was called. But bands, new bands, I always find it hard finding contemporary bands that I can get really excited about.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because, you know, I'm getting older and, you know, I don't have that excitement that I used to have when I was like 18, 20. But I find it hard, you know, really following a band now.
Mm-hmm. What about the bands that were your contemporaries at one time that are already part of like revival tours? I remember when I was a kid, it was all the 50s bands that were coming through, and now it's like, you know, the Motels maybe playing with Berlin and stuff like that. And you guys seem like a whole other world from that. But
we've always tried to avoid all of the 80s connotations, even from, you know, like the early 90s. You know, when we were asked to go on 80s compilations, we always turned them down. You know, you won't find a lot of our tracks on 80s compilations because, you know, we were aware of, you know, the weight hanging around our neck that was going to cause. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think we have managed to avoid it. We're lucky. We're extremely lucky that we have managed to maintain quite a big fan base and quite a cult following throughout those years, and we haven't had to rely on, you know, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what some of your contemporaries have been around for a while are Sparks. I know you covered Never Turn Your Back on Mother Earth on the last record, and I want to get your take on their new album. If you heard Lil Beethoven, is I know.
I saw them in London for the first time in ages at the Q Awards, and they were telling me about the new album, and I was meant to go out and get it, and I still haven't heard it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I should have brought you a copy. I have a couple copies in my car, actually. Who of bands that have been around as long as you guys have do you associate with? Are there any friends of yours or any of those bands that at the time when, at least as a listener here, you know, in the Southland, K-Rock, and you hear all these other bands, and so many of those bands aren't around anymore. Do you keep in contact with any of these people, or?
Not, you know, a lot. I don't. It's not like I'm ringing people all the time, and you know, there are certain people from certain bands that I like that if I go to town, I might give them a call and we might meet up. You know.
Yeah. Is there a particular song on this album that you've always wanted to record, maybe since you were first into music? Is there one that stands out, or are they all that close to you?
The first song that I had on the list when I started putting together the short list for cover versions this time was Lost in the Stars. And I didn't know quite how I was going to do that because the majority of this album is electronic. You know, I really like the idea of doing an electronic cover versions record because there aren't that many.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't think of any, you know, by, you know, sort of like fairly major artists. There might be some very obscure, you know, electronic cover version records, but there aren't that many. And Lost in the Stars is the one that doesn't fit into that at all. It's very traditional. It's piano and strings and vocals, but because I, you know, desperately wanted to do that song, I somehow had to make that fit in with the electronic feel of the rest of the record. So for me, that was the, you know, if I had to get rid of 10 of the songs, that would be the one that I'd keep.
Talk about the band. Is that something, after you get through this and you kind of get all this, and you do the tour and you know people are enjoying the record, is it something you immediately get back to start working with the guys again, or what's the future looking like?
Well, I'm just doing a very short tour, so I'll be finished, you know, by the beginning of May probably. Dave's going out on a longer tour, so I'm not sure exactly when he's finishing, but probably, you know, around autumn time. Mm-hmm. But after that, I imagine we'll start talking and trying to schedule when we'd go back into the studio again, when we'd like to get back into the studio again. And I can't imagine it would be until at least 2004 sometime.
Mm-hmm. Talk about performing solo. Is that something you're anxious about, looking forward to?
About 50-50, both of those. You know, obviously I've always sung when we play concerts, you know, 3 or 4 songs. I've never been a focal point for the whole of a concert, but you know, once the adrenaline kicks in, I'm sure I'll really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I listened to a lot of your music over the last week again for the first time in a while, just kind of nonstop, and so much of it seems relevant now in terms of songs like People Are People and things that kind of just about people getting along in this day and age. Have you thought about that in terms of your music? Does what's going on affect you, you know, politically going on affect your art at all, or is it more personal?
I think I've always been more introspective generally. You know, maybe there was a small phase at, you know, 83, 84 or so, where things weren't quite so introspective. But, you know, I think I have always tried to bring joy to the world. I think that's one of the things. Our music is very universal and it is liked all over the world. You know, and it's a shame what's happening now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, people could find solace in what you do, though? Is that something you think about just in general, not even what's going on, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, it's obviously will matter what happens over the course of the next few weeks, but after, you know, on the day of September the 11th, for instance, we were playing in Vienna, Austria, and, you know, after watching all the images on TV, we were trying to decide, what do we do? Do we go on stage? Do we play tonight? It all just seems a little futile to go on and sing and dance and you know, Dave, our singer, called home to his wife. They live in New York, just you know, not too far from where the World Trade Center was, and she said, "Of course you should go on. You know, your music brings joy to the world. You should carry on." And I thought that was a great answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And lastly, just tell us what I know you live up in Santa Barbara. We're not going to cut anything specific or personal, but what do you like to do when you're not working? There's certain things that you enjoy that people may not know about you, that how you spend your time, either with your family or alone. Just
the main thing I like doing is playing soccer. Yeah. So I play like soccer 3 times a week at the moment. Yeah. You know, we have 2 practices a week and 1 game, and play with a team, and we generally lose every week, but it's fun.
And just looking towards the future, is there anything you haven't done as a performer that you want, a certain place you want to play, a certain type of song you want to write? Do you set goals that way in terms of what you're doing? I
just want to carry on making music as long as it's fun. and as long as I feel that I'm still making music that's relevant and as good as stuff as I've done in the past. You know, if it got to a point where I was putting out music and going on tour and people were coming not to hear the record that I just put out, but coming to hear stuff that came out 15 years ago, you know, it'll be time to give up, I think. But, you know, as long as it's still fun, it's, you know, it's worth carrying on as well.
Definitely. A pleasure. The new music's definitely worth carrying on for.
Thank you.
You're doing great stuff.
Thanks.